Okay, this is the third time doing this. I really hope it works. I hope the quality is good enough. For some reason, the first time it was awful, and the second time, just my voice recorded, so that's fun. We're going to start here by looking at this very nice Google Doc that XLDKX is kind enough to make. As you can see, they got a list of tools and why you're going to need them. For the tutorial I'm going to be doing, you don't need this one because I'm not even going to open that program. Now, I am going to make a second video on how I do rooms and getting all the props for said rooms. For that, you are going to want to have Sims 4 tray importer, which you can find on Mod The Sims, I believe. I'll get a link to it. Anyways, once you got all those programs, and of course you're going to need The Sims. Pretty obvious one there. Like they've shown here, create an assets folder just like this. It's going to help so much. It's going to make everything easier. We'll go ahead and go to mine. And here's what we got. It's going to tell you to make these 4 folders. I've got some extra ones going on just for my own sanity and getting everything ready. So now, what you're going to do once you have everything installed, or you can do it beforehand or while it's installing, go ahead and go into The Sims, and you can either, this is going to make it easier or harder in SimRipper. You can either use a save you've already had with all the Sims in it, and if the Sim you're going to use is already in there, great. Or you can add it in, doesn't really matter. It's just going to make it a little bit more confusing to find the Sim when you go in SimRipper. So instead, what you can do is create a new save, delete all the Sims out of it, and then just add in your Sim that you're going to use. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter. So once you've done that, save the game, get out of the game, and now we're going to get the Sim. So you're going to open SimRipper. I just have a shortcut. It takes a good minute to load up, so I've got it preloaded so that we don't have to sit here and wait. The select button here, you're going to navigate to your saves folder and find the newest save. If you sort by date modified, the one you just made will be at the top and easier for you. So once you open it up, you're going to get a whole list of all the Sims in the save. I'm using one of the clean saves in the game, just put in the Star Wars characters along with mine. And so it's a little bit easier to find which Sim I'm looking for. Otherwise, this list is going to be super long, but you can use these filters here to get down to the type of Sim you want to look for. It's still going to be a little difficult because, think about it, sometimes you're going to look for a young adult female. Think of how many of those are just in the game in general per family. It's going to show every single one individually, so it's up to you. Now, as we're going down this list here, if you're using CC eyelashes, whether in the face detail slot or the glasses slot, you're going to want to make sure that this setting is set to solid and glass meshes and textures. It's basically going to separate the Sim and their eyelashes into 2 different meshes so that you're not dealing with just one. And you can't do anything to the eyelashes at that point. So make sure you save it that way. And then go ahead and select the outfit you want. If they're not in the outfit you already want, drop down works and then you just select it. It's going to take a minute because it's loading everything up again. I'm not going to make you wait through that. This is one we're going to go through. And you're going to save it as a DAE. So it's going to take a minute. You're going to navigate to your render folder and then your Sims. Now, mine is full. I'm not going to save this Sim again. This is like the 4th time I've saved it. So you understand how to save a file. Name it whatever you want in this folder. Once you save it, now we're going to go over to Sims 4 Studio to get our pose. So download it, get it all set up, ready to go. Now before you do anything, you're going to want to go in your mods folder and get a pose you want to use, whatever one you decide to use, get its package file, and then copy paste it into your render folder. I suggest in your poses making a packages folder. That way you can put your pose packages in there instead of getting them all mixed up with the blend folder or files. So once you've got them in there, you're good to go. Go ahead back to Sims 4 Studio and you're going to go to My Projects and then navigate to your packages folder, and whichever pose pack we're going to use. I'm going to use cat versus again. Once you got it open here, we're going to go to clips, and that's going to give you a list of all the poses. So I've already exported 3 of these now, but we're going to do another one. So select a pose you want. Don't change anything here. This is the most important thing. Make sure your rig here matches the type of sim or animal you're using the pose for. Once that's done, go ahead and hit export. Now, what I like to do is, as you can see here, I add something that helps me remember what pack it's from, what pose pack it's from. So as you can see, I did pose 17. I would do that with this one, but I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, now that we've got our sim and our pose ready to go, we're going to go ahead and jump into Blender. This is kind of the main splash page. Figure it out. Obviously, if you've been doing some renders and you save them, they'll be over here in your recent. For now, just go ahead and go to General, and it's going to load in these 3 objects. I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly how they all work, what they all do, but I'll explain them as the best that I understand them to work. So we'll start with the camera. The camera is what will be rendered. So we'll go into this camera. We'll take us into camera view. So anything in this square would be rendered. And you can move the camera, do whatever you need. We'll get to that as we're posing the sim. Now, I should start with explaining to move up and down, you're going to use a little hand. That'll move you up and down and around. Now, if you want to rotate, you're just going to use your scroll wheel button. Just click it in, and there you go. You're good to rotate. So, and then lastly, we have a light, and it's a light. I don't really know what more to explain. You can change its settings and manipulate the color, how bright it is, what type of light it is. We'll get to that as we go as well. Now, I do not know what all of these are. I know that this is a texture, and I know this green one will change depending on what object you have selected. So since we have the light, it's showing a light bulb. Now if we go to camera, it shows the camera. And this here is where you can change the focal length. I'm not going to describe it like I know it. I know it has to do with like normal camera apertures and things like that, I think. It's doing the same thing. If you go up, it's going to zoom in, and if you go down, it's going to zoom out. I tend to use this if like my scroll wheel zoom isn't enough and I'm really trying to get just that perfect little angle, you know. Now with the camera, if you try and use the scroll wheel to move, it'll take you right out of the camera view. If you want to be able to use the scroll wheel, I just think it's a little bit easier than trying to use the tools here to move it and angle it and things like that. You can, this little arrow over here is going to open another menu. You're going to go to view and then lock camera to view. And that way you can do all your swirlies and you're up and down and you're good to go. You're a little bit in more control of the camera. Now for the cube, it's a cube. Exactly what it seems like. In the Google Doc tutorial, they talk about resizing the cube, just making it bigger. I just go to the resize tool here, grab the white circle, and then just pull. Now say you want to make it wider, you can go by each of the vertices and change it as you wish. So that made it wider, we can make it taller, and we can make it longer. So not really a big deal. We're just going to size it up. And basically what you're going to be using this for is your scene, so that you have a nice just flat background. You don't have all the gray weird stuff. Now obviously with a cube, it's not going to be very fun to try and get the camera in here and hang out with all the faces. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete one of the faces. So make sure while you're in object mode here, you have the cube selected, and then you're going to change it to edit mode, and then make sure you have this last one selected. It's to select individual faces. So now we'll just click on one, whatever orientation you have it in, whatever side you want to take off. take that one off. If you want to take more than one off and make it like a backdrop, you can do that as well. Now keep in mind, if you want to move it again and do anything, rotate, resize, you need to go back into object mode, and then it'll let you move the cube around or whatever other object you have. Now that we've got that taken care of, let's bring in our sim. Now it puts it in its own collection when it starts. It gets its own base collection. We're going to add another one. This is just what I do to help kind of keep it all organized. I'll put my sim, and this is more if I have more than one sim, or if I'm building a room, I'll even add another one that says props or objects, just to kind of keep everything neat and organized. So now that we've got the sim box, we're going to make sure it's selected, and we're going to file, import, and then as a DAE. Now, as I kind of talked about before, it's not going to take you to your correct directory, but this one at least, you can add some favorites. So while you're in the folder that you want to favorite, you just hit the plus button. So I'll show you a quick one here. We're in my documents folder, and boom, it adds it to the favorites list. So I recommend doing your render folder. As you can see, I've also done other folders and folders inside the render folder, just so it's easier to navigate. But we're going to go grab our sim. Let's see, here we go. And voila, we have a sim. She's very small in comparison to the box. So once it gets a second, it'll load in a lamp and a rig. I have no idea what the lamp is for. I just delete it. And then your rig is your sim. So I rename it to the sim's name. Obvious reasons. Now the reason there's no color is we're not in either of these two modes. One of them is the render view, this one on the end, and this one is material preview. That's what it says. So we'll go with that. I go all the way to just render because it turns the light on and you're good to go. Doesn't really matter which of those two. You can even work in this one if you really want to. I don't suggest it because then you won't see the texture of the sim, but it's up to you. So we're going to just rotate her. Now if you click on one, if you have the object select or the tool selected and you come and click on one of the angles, you can open a little menu here, and by that angle it will let you rotate, move, resize, whichever one you want to do. You just remember every time you switch tool to click one of the directions. It doesn't matter because you can change it as you go, but if you switch to move and it's still, this says resize, if you end up using these, it will resize instead of move. So make sure your down here menu matches what you're using. So we're going to resize her a bit because this is tiny. There we go. I'm going to move her up a little bit because it looks like her feet are clipping with the floor. Okay, now here's what I was talking about, the eyelashes and why you need to do the two separate textures. See, her eyelashes look a little funky. So let's go ahead and fix that. So when you drop down on the rig, you've got these two meshes. The glass one, as you can guess, it's the glasses slot. So that's where it puts the eyelashes, no matter whether you're using the glasses slot or the face detail in game. Doesn't matter. So to get this fixed, we're going to come down to this one. I think it's materials. Yeah. And we're going to make sure use nodes is on. Now with this little one that gets pre-generated, it's like another half of a screen. You can kind of change it to any of these different views. We're going to go to shader editor, and then we're going to get this one. It's already made because it knows the texture. It put it in as it was loaded in, but we're going to make some changes. So take out this ambient one. I've never used it and I'm not 100% sure what it's for. With the ones that are already here, take the specular one and match its color to the specular on this principal one. Now we're also going to add in two more little modifiers. So if you come up to add, we're going to go to mix shader. Now the really cool thing, see how it's gray here, but then when we kind of have it on, it's white. If you click on it, it will auto fill in the connectors. The last one we're going to use is a transparent one. We'll just set it up here. Now this one got automatically put into the first slot and we don't want that, so we're just going to take this one from the transparent, click it on the first one, and it'll automatically drop it down. Now the last thing we're going to do here in the node editor is on the base color, take the alpha dot and connect it to the FAC on the mix shader. Now as you can see, we're not done. It still looks kind of funny, but this is where it needs to be to move on. So down here on your, what is this called? Let's find out. The outliner. Cool. So that. We're going to come down. Now if settings is hidden like this, just hit the arrow button like most other programs. And you're looking for these two. They're going to say opaque at first. We're going to change them both to alpha hashed. I do not know if the second one makes a difference. I just do them both just in case, but for sure the blend mode needs to be changed to alpha hashed. Now, last thing here about with their meshes and things, see how she looks kind of glossy and just not, the colors don't look right? That is because the specular of the full body rig isn't connected. So we're going to hop in there and it's going to look literally the same as it did for the glasses one. Just delete the ambience again and connect the color to the specular. And there we go. Looks a lot more like a regular sim now. Now the fun part, we're going to be doing some posing. Now there's probably other ways you can do this. I know with the tutorial they have you set up the pose in the other version of Blender, then bring it in. That didn't really work for me. I got really confused with using two different versions of Blender back and forth. So I just kind of tinkered with it until I kind of found a way to deal with poses in here. So while you are working with your sim, we're good to go here. Make sure you click on the top one, not any of these drop downs. Make sure it's the full one. And then you're going to get this little guy over here. We're going to click on him and that's your poses area and talking about the rig. We're going to open bone groups, leave that aside for just now, and pose library. Now what you're going to do is on this little drop down, there's going to be nothing. And that's because we have to put in the pose. So we're going to go to File, and instead of Import, we're going to do Append. And then we're going to have to navigate to the folder where we left our poses. Let's go Poses, and then we put them in. We didn't put them in Package because we got them out. Now they're going to be as blend files, and you want to make sure you choose one of those. So let's just whichever one, and then you're going to all these fun folders, but we just need the action. And then you double click on there. And of course it doesn't just snap her in, it just adds it to a list of appended items that you can use. Now with the drop down, boom, there we go. Go ahead and select it. Now it's not going to snap either because there's some issue with this corruption thing. I don't know why, does it to me with every pose, but if you click this little book down here, that is the sanitize action and it'll fix the pose. Now if you just give it a click and then the little magnifying glass, your sim will snap into place. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about the lighting and how we go about rendering. So there's two main types of rendering. There's EV, which is this one, and then there is cycles. Now EV is better for a lower tier graphics card, if your computer just isn't top of the line, or if you're kind of concerned about taxing your graphics card too hard, I suggest just leaving it on EV. Now, I have a pretty decent graphics card and a pretty good PC. I have a gaming PC, so I'm going to go ahead and do cycles. Now, see how it's all pixely and it looks kind of funny? That is where the sampling comes into play. So here we've got the sampling at 128 and 32 for the viewport. The viewport is just the camera, what the camera sees. What we're really worried about mainly is the render one. That's what's going to change how many color samples the render is able to detect. I think that's how it works. Anyways, as a better explanation, if you're unable to do a high render sampling rate, I highly suggest making the background and lighting something that will have a similar color scheme. I'll show you what I mean here. I also recommend, if you're going to use cycles, edit everything in Eevee and then hop over to cycles when you're done, or else you're going to deal with this pixely regenerating every time and it gets kind of annoying. So back to Eevee we go. Now we're going to bring in our light, and we're actually going to bring in a couple more. On the video, or on the Google Doc, there is a link to a tutorial about 3-point lighting. I've just kind of used that ever since, and it helps quite a bit. So we'll get 2 more lights. It's going to be super bright. We'll take 2 of those out right now. So down in our light menu, the light is automatically set at 1,000 watts. Now, I tend to leave one of those at that, and then I kind of tinker with the rest. So we're going to take the one that we're going to leave at 1,000, and we're going to put it back towards the back of her. Now, it looks kind of weird, obviously. We'll get there. Now we're going to bring in one that's going to sit in front of her. We're going to up to the top, wherever we're going to go. And this is the one I tend to drop down. Sometimes I just use half of whatever the first value was. Obviously, sometimes I'll change it depending on the lighting, the color of the lighting, how I want it to look, so on and so forth. And then this last third one, we're going to go into 250. Now, there's a way better explanation in the video. This is just a quick overview of how I set my lights up, which is just a version of those. So this one's going to kind of come down. I kind of put it right kind of in front, kind of next to her. It just, again, helps create better shadows. Now, what I mean about the color thing is, so notice how we've got the dark brown hair, yellow accessories, and a blue skirt. Now, if we go and put a purple background on here with purple lights, you're going to get really weird texture dots. I don't really know how to explain it. It's going to look weird. I will show you an example of that here. So with the cube, if we want to change the cube color, we'll select cube, and then it's this one, the material editor, and then just change the base color. So let's do something very contrasting. We'll go wild with purple here. And to make it even better, we're going to change some of the lights to purple too, which you get the whole scroll wheel. If you want also, you can come over here and put hex characters in, or you can move it by RGB, whatever you want. I tend to just kind of do the circle unless I'm looking for a specific exact color, like I'll have the actual hex code. So we've got one purple light. Sometimes I'll change them both. Sometimes I'll just leave one. Again, it just depends on the ambiance that you want. We'll just leave it back. Whoop, not E. Oh, right. Okay. So now, while we've got our camera, we're going to go and position it so we can see her better. Now, obviously this is landscape. If we want it portrait style, we can come into, I want to make sure the camera is selected. I believe it is, nope, next one down. You get your dimensions, your resolution. So if I'm doing a square, I'll do them both at 1920. And if I want it vertical, I just obviously swap the values and then it rotates 90. And let's go ahead and get her ready. We'll zoom in so it has a little bit harder of a time. Now we'll come back and we'll switch it over to cycles. And I'm going to leave this down at 128 just so you guys can get an example of how this is going to look. So once you've got your camera in position, everything's ready to go, and you want to get your picture, just hit F12. Now this is going to take a second, but we will wait so I can show you what I mean. As this is finishing rendering, I realized we kind of lucked out a little bit, but you'll still be able to see what I'm talking about with the colors. It's going to change depending on what color you use, of course. So you can just kind of play with it a little bit, especially if you're doing this low render. It's not going to take as long. Again, that depends on your computer too, but shouldn't take as long as if you're going to throw the sampling rate up crazy. So as you can see, we've got
some little fuzzies here, and if we go into her hair, we've got some more. Now the first time I recorded this, I used a yellow background to try and match, and it actually added a bunch of red dots to her hair. Up here you can kind of see a little bit more of the blue. Now, obviously not everyone is going to be zooming in on your pictures, but I'm quite self-critical, so we're going to make it better. To get away with that, what I'm going to do is I've been doing my last renders, last few ones at 2500. Depending on how many sims you have, how many props you have, basically everything comes into play, but that'll dictate kind of how long it's going to take. My GPU is pretty good. Some of the ones I did with a bunch of the props took about an hour, and when I was testing this out yesterday on the first record, it took about, excuse me, 30 minutes around, give or take. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get this started, and when it finishes, I will show you the finished product. And I'll show you how long it takes, kind of, before I go. So here we go. We've got it ready. We're at our 2500 and F12. Now, as it goes, see how it's taking a lot longer in these tiles? Basically what that's doing is going over it multiple times and trying to match the colors better, if I'm interpreting what I've learned so far. Now, as you're up here, you're going to see how much time has elapsed and how much time is remaining. This is going to move and change. I've had mine go from low to skyrocket to a number once it kind of realized how much it had to do, so on and so forth. That is about it for the tutorial, I think. I will go ahead and enter this image in when we're done to kind of show you the difference of those two sample rates. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is only the second time I've ever done something like this, so I hope it made sense. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment on this, or if you want to ask anonymously, you can come over to my Tumblr and ask me anything on Anon. Obviously, please don't send hate. I really just don't want to deal with that, but if you have questions, feel free to message me on there. My username is the same as it is here, Dreams of Plum Bobs with no spaces. I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day, and I hope you guys have a just happy life. Honestly, sending you good vibes.